the longer that a company stays in business, the more it starts to transcend that interest, and the legacy and the meaning behind the company becomes so much more important. Why do we exist? Why are we here? Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Flow Over Fear podcast, where it is our mission to help you to rise above fear and realize your ultimate potential in leadership and life. I'm your host, Adam Hill, and it is my goal to share with you the human side of high performance. My guests share their experience with fear, anxiety, struggle, challenge, and, most importantly, despite all of it, how they rose above it to achieve incredible results. So, if you're ready to rise up, let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome to Flow Over Fear. And today on this solo episode, I wanted to talk about something really cool that happened recently and share some of the lessons that I've learned from it. Our company, our family business that I've been running for the last few years, just made it to its 100th year anniversary. And last year we celebrated our first centennial. And that is something that is super, inspiring to me. Makes me feel incredibly proud. Makes me feel incredibly humbled and honored to be a part of such a legacy and be such a small part of this legacy, that I've had the opportunity and the privilege of running it for the last few years and been employed by it for, the last 20. It's really been an incredible experience. And I've learned a lot from that. One of the interesting things about being in a fourth generation business that's been around for 100 years is there's not really a lot of companies around that have done that. And so one of the things is there's not really a cohort of people where you could talk about some of the issues that are faced here, or some of the lessons learned, or how how to handle certain situations, because quite frankly, there's just not a lot of evidence or empirical evidence or examples of it. I mean, we can look into the past and of course find some, but it's they're very few and far between. But there are some lessons that I've learned that I want to share today. Just three in particular that I wanted to share in today's episode, because my perspective was reforged last week, if that's a word. It was just my perspective on the power of this legacy has been, solidified again. And it was amazing to go to the centennial party, which we had at the Disneyland Hotel. And we did that for a specific reason, was because Disney, as you may know, is also celebrating their centennial. They've also been around for 100 years. And interestingly, Hill Brothers Chemical, which is the company that I currently run, was founded in Los Angeles, in just literally a few blocks away from where 6 months later, that's right, we're older than Disney. 6 months later, Walt and Roy Disney would set up shop for the first time in Los Angeles. So literally a few blocks away. And then we evolved, obviously, separately. And our corporate entity, our corporate office, was literally just a few blocks away from Disneyland by the time within the last few years. So we have been a neighbor, a sister company, if you will, to Disney for a very long time. So we had our party at the Disneyland Hotel. It was an amazing night. I got to speak. My dad got to speak and share some of the experiences, and I got to see the faces of the people that work within our company, and the faces of the people that have built the legacy over the course of many years. One person there that worked with our company for 53 years was still present, and still, despite the hundreds of years of experience in that room, there was nobody there that had really been there beyond aside from the gentleman who worked there for 53 years, much beyond half of the time of the company has been around. So the question becomes, how does that legacy sustain itself? How do we continue to operate? And I did a lot of research into different companies that have made it to 100 years, and was really impressed by what I found there. And I think there's a lot of commonalities in why they exist. And if you think this may be a little bit more away from the central message of the theme of this show, which is flow over fear, then I just want to say that fear exists in organizations as well. And fear exists in organizations, which also shows itself as fear in individuals. And fear is something that also can be, if you learn to build that healthy relationship with it, whether it be personally or within an organization, you can learn to rise above it and become sustainable. And a lot of that comes down to the same principles we talked to regarding the individual's relationship with fear. Comes down to core values, comes down to being disciplined, and comes down to being aligned with the purpose and moving in the direction of fear and dancing with it in such a way that you can continue to grow and live a fulfilling life. And the same is true from an organizational standpoint. So there's a lot of lessons that we can learn from a 100-year-old business that we can apply to our own lives to help us to build a better relationship with fear and build and become more fulfilled over our lives, so that when we reach the end of our lives, hopefully many, 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 many years from now, we can look back on pride, the legacy we've had. And by no means is this the end of Hill Brothers' legacy. In fact, it's just the beginning. But as I looked out at the legacy that was in that room at that time, I could look back, even just the small part that I played, with a great sense of pride and joy that we've made it this far. It was truly, truly inspiring. One of the coolest experiences of my life. There are very, very few of us, the companies that make it. Even past the first 10 years, there's a very small percentage of companies that make it that far. Even fewer, make it to the second generation in the companies, and something like 4% make it to the third generation in the business. And I think it's something like 0.5% by estimates, because that's the best they can do, is estimate that make it to the fourth generation, and 100 years. But it can be argued that Hill Brothers has made it to the fifth generation because the founder employed his father. So there could be an argument that made there. So the chances are very slim that companies can make it that far. But there are some common themes in those. And in researching different companies that have made it that far, I came across a number of them, and we know some of the common ones. I mean, Disney, for one, is going to make it to 100 years soon. Ford Motors, Johnson and Johnson, some of these behemoth companies that have almost become so public that they're no longer really the legacy companies that they were. They try to rest on their core values, and I think, but the fact that they've become such behemoths, and that and now that they're public, it drives this this profit motive that is stronger than I think the culture in a lot of ways. That can be argued, but it's at least what I've seen. I know that when it's public and when it's driven by market, then really it's looking at short-term values. But when it comes to those 100-year-old, those legacy businesses, those long-term businesses that are still privately owned, that still live based on their core values, what makes them sustainable in a lot of ways is the value that they're bringing to the world, the value that they're creating, and that value that they're creating actually transcends the profit motive. Sure, profit is important, cash flow is important, the numbers are important, just like managing our budgets are important, but it's not the first and it's not the be all end all of making that legacy last. There are really three things there are really three lessons about sustainability that come from a 100-year-old family business. And the first that I've seen is that they master the balance of focus, of obsessive focus, and adaptation. And there are two perfect examples of this that I've learned about, because when you look at those legacy companies that are still have the ownership integrity that they've originally had, or the integrity of their core values. Two names that come to mind are Nintendo. That's right, I said Nintendo, and Zildjian. Nintendo. Now, you may think of them as the gaming entertainment company, the company that creates the Nintendo Entertainment System. You're probably thinking to yourself, well, they came out in 1987, didn't they? Well, that's when we first saw them. But long before that, they started as a playing card company back in the 1800s, and so they made playing cards, and over time, over the course of 100 years, over more than 100 years, they evolved and changed so that then they got into video games, and really, really high-tech video games, so that today you couldn't distinguish the company it is now from the company it was then. But here's the thing. If you take any block of time, those 10 years, you'll see a company that is obsessively focused, and they've struck the balance with that and being able to adapt over time. They are obsessively focused. If you take a 10-year block of time, you'll see that the changes that they made were deliberate, so that the long-term evolution of the company went from playing cards to gaming entertainment, but over to video game entertainment. But over time, their core focus stayed the same. Gaming entertainment. It's what they do. And the same is true with Zildjian, and I think that's how you pronounce it. So I apologize if I'm mispronouncing it. But they manufacture cymbals for drum kits and things like that. If you've ever been to a rock concert or anything like that, and you look at the drum kit, you'll see that Zildjian name on the cymbals. And this company was created quite by accident back in the 1600s. It is 400 years old, ladies and gentlemen. In 1623, the founder of the company, the namesake, was trying to make gold, essentially, like many people were back in the day. People were trying to make gold, and failed miserably at doing so, but discovered an alloy that made a really, really cool noise when you hit it with a stick. And ever since that time, for 400 years, they have been obsessively focused on making metal things that you can hit with a stick. That's really their core focus. And so they were obsessively focused, and they've adapted over time, not to the extent that Nintendo has done it. So these are two completely different companies, both of whom were obsessively focused, but both of whom knew how to adapt. Because you look at the way a cymbal was used then in 1600s versus how it's done now, and you can clearly say that the highest quality cymbals in the world are these Zildjian cymbals. Some of the highest quality video games in the world are Nintendo games. And I know you PS4 people are gonna get on my case about that, but you're wrong. I played N64, and that was the best. I mean, GoldenEye, you can't do any better than GoldenEye. But anyway, and that's 100 years of legacy right there. PlayStation doesn't have that. The second thing that companies with 100-year legacy have, that the lessons that we can learn from them, are that the meaning behind these companies, the meaning transcends. The legacy is bigger than us. The meaning is bigger than any individual in the company. It transcends the self-interest. And that's an important concept, because within any business that is solely focused on profit motive, you see companies that are more in terms of the self-interest, or more in terms of the identity of the company during that period of time. And yes, identity is important, and we all want to, we're all interested in our self-interests. But the longer that a company stays in business, the more it starts to transcend that interest, and the legacy and the meaning behind the company becomes so much more important. Why do we exist? Why are we here? And for Hill Brothers, the power behind that, the power behind our company is not chemicals. It's not the bottom line profitability or the distributions to the ownership that we would make on a yearly basis or whatever it may be. It's the livelihoods we create. Literally, our guiding mission is to create livelihoods, meaningful livelihoods and careers for generations. That's what we want to be in the world. And because we do that effectively, because we have this legacy and this meaning behind what we do, because we provide chemicals for life, environmental chemicals for life that help our municipalities and our industries and all sorts of things. Because of that, we're blessed with profit, and that can keep us sustainable. So we look at the meaning behind our business first. From centennial businesses, look at the meaning first. The profit comes from that, because the legacy starts to transcend. The legacy of what they represent transcends that first and foremost profit motive. And part of the benefit of that is that, companies that have exceeded that 100-year mark have this staying power, have this lasting power of they've already gone through that entrepreneurial phase. And in each generation, there's a new entrepreneurial spirit that comes into it, where we drive adaptation and growth. And Hill Brothers is in that phase right now where we're building on that. However, the way that differentiates from somebody or a company that's just starting or within its first 10 years is that that company's still trying to work to build their identity, to formulate it, to shape it, and to adapt it to the point where it's like the growth from an infant to a child. There's a lot of growth that has to happen there. With the legacy companies, some of that identity is already formed, even though we continuously are evolving and growing. Those changes happen slowly, and the legacy becomes more powerful, and it transcends the self-interest. And then the final thing that I want to share, the final lesson that I want to share from a 100-year-old family business, is that it's all about the relationships. This goes back to why do we exist, and it does kind of relate to the meaning part of it, but in the end, and this is true with us as individuals as well, that in the end, it is all about the relationships we have, the community that we create. Now, as I had the great fortune of looking out across the room of people that helped build the legacy of Hill Brothers, I looked at all the relationships that we created, and they extended well beyond that room. And this is the powerful part, is because there were a couple hundred people in the room on the evening of our celebration, but each of those people had relationships outside of the company, and those relationships were important to maintaining the legacy of that company or the legacy of ourselves. Those relationships helped continue to build us to what we were, to the point that the influence, that the reach we had, that the people that we've touched, that the people that 100-year-old companies have touched, extends into the millions, even if the customer base may be just a couple thousand, or the employee base maybe 100 or 200. The reach over the course of generations can be in the millions. And that's an important legacy to keep hold of. That's an important thing to take home from this, is that it's not just about creating value or creating dollars that come into our business. That's important to maintain the engine. the important part is it's the relationships that we're building and how we're adding value to those relationships. That's the true currency of a fulfilling life. The true currency of a fulfilling life is the authentic and meaningful relationships that we create. Now, century-old businesses understand that. And they build those relationships with suppliers, with their vendors, with their customers, with their employees. First and foremost, their employees. And that becomes what it's about. That builds into the fulfillment nature of the business. And, I recognize how fortunate, how lucky we are to have made it where we are today. Because over the course of 100 years, there's a lot of things that can happen. There's a lot of things that have happened throughout that history that could have taken us down. I mean, you had a Great Depression that we thrived through. We had World War II that we thrived through. We had various economic downturns and recessions that we thrived through. We had a pandemic recently that we thrived through. And a variety of other things that could have taken us down. And that's not the end of it. There will be more. But it was our ability to become adaptable and to stay true to the meaning behind our business, to our core values, to what we represent in the world, and to be patient with it, to patiently add value. That's how we made it through. And we are fortunate to be where we are. And I hope that if you're listening to this, that you got something from this individually, that, that there are lessons individually that we can, that can help us to better navigate our own lives and help our own sustainability in life. That when we master the balance of focus and adaptation, we can continue to grow and sustain ourselves. That when we focus on our own legacy and what we represent to the world, and we put that above our own self-interest, that we can become more in the world, that we can live a more fulfilling life in that way. And when we can realize that the true currency of our world is relationships, that's really what fills us up. That's what life is all about. That's when you realize what a sustainable and beautiful life this can be, and an abundant life this can be. I hope you're living in abundance today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for joining me. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to the Flow Over Fear podcast. If you'd like to learn more about getting into flow and learn the foundations of flow, I have a free video series on my website at www.adamcliffordhill.com called The Foundations of Flow. Feel free to go there and download it and start your journey to rising above fear and achieving greater flow in your life. And if you like this episode, and I'm guessing you did if you stuck around for this long, then please do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and you will receive notifications when I have new interviews, new recaps, and new trainings that pop up on YouTube. Thanks again for joining us.